Modern humans in our current anatomical form have existed for approximately 300,000 years. Of those 300,000 years, we have written records for approximately 5,000. The other 295,000 years of human life, of human thought, of human building happen beyond the reach of the written record. What we know of those years comes from stone, bone, pottery, and inference. What we suspect goes further. What follows is a guided descent through the layers of the ancient past. The civilizations we have cataloged, the civilizations we are still uncovering, and the ones at the edge of what archaeology can address. Tier 1, the well-known. Civilizations that appear in every general history. Ancient Egypt, the Old Kingdom from approximately 2700 to 2200 BCE. The Middle Kingdom, the New Kingdom, the pharaohs from Djoser through Cleopatra VII. The pyramids at Giza, the Valley of the Kings, the Library of Alexandria. Egypt is the most studied ancient civilization in human history. The hieroglyphs were deciphered by Champollion in 1822. The chronology from King lists and astronomical references is reasonably firm. The major sites have been excavated and re-excavated since the early 19th century. Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates. Sumer, the first identifiable urban civilization, dating from approximately 4500 BCE, Akkad Babylon, Assyria. The Persian Empire, the cuneiform writing system, first deciphered in the 19th century from the Behistun inscription, has provided the most complete record of any ancient society. The full corpus of cuneiform texts on clay tablets that have survived millennia of burial runs to hundreds of thousands of documents. The majority have not yet been translated. Specialists who can read the languages number in the hundreds worldwide. Ancient Greece, the Bronze Age Mycenaean civilization, the Dark Age, the Archaic period, the Classical period of Athens and Sparta, the Hellenistic period after Alexander the Great, the contributions to mathematics, philosophy, drama, government. The Greek archaeological record is extensive. The textual record, through manuscript transmission, is partial but substantial. Most of what survives is what later civilizations chose to copy. Ancient Rome, the Republic from 509 BCE, the Empire from 27 BCE, the eventual division and fall of the Western Empire in 476 CE. The Eastern Empire, in its later forms called Byzantium, continued until 1453. Rome's documentary record is the most extensive of any pre-modern civilization. The legal codes, the histories, the personal correspondence, the architectural specifications, all preserved through monastic copying and now through digitization. Modern historians of Rome have more primary material than they can fully process. At Tier 1, these civilizations occupy the foundation of every history textbook. Below this tier, the field becomes considerably larger. Tier 2, the less familiar, civilizations that are well attested but receive less attention in general history. The Hittites, an Indo-European civilization that dominated central Anatolia from approximately 1700 to 1180 BCE. The Hittites maintained an empire that, at its height, contested Egypt for control of the Levant. The Battle of Kadesh in approximately 1274 BCE was the largest chariot battle in recorded history. The Hittite civilization was almost completely forgotten after its collapse. It was rediscovered in the 19th century, primarily through references in Egyptian and Mesopotamian texts that mentioned a powerful northern empire. The Hittite capital at Hattusa, in modern Turkey, was identified in 1834. The cuneiform Hittite language was deciphered in the early 20th century. The Hittites were one of three major powers of the Late Bronze Age. They vanished into archaeology and were not rediscovered for over 3,000 years. The Hurrians and the Mitanni, a civilization that dominated the area of modern Syria and southeastern Turkey in the 2nd millennium BCE. The Mitanni kingdom was, for a period, one of the great powers of the ancient Near East, intermarrying with Egyptian pharaohs and contesting the Hittites. The Mitanni elite spoke an Indo-Aryan language closely related to Sanskrit, though their subject population was largely Hurrian-speaking. The Mitanni capital Washukani has never been located. It is somewhere in modern Syria, but the exact site has eluded archaeologists for over a century of searching. The civilization is reasonably well documented from external sources. Its own capital remains lost. The Phoenicians, a Levantine maritime civilization that emerged in the 2nd millennium BCE and reached its peak between approximately 1200 and 500 BCE. The Phoenicians invented the alphabet from which most modern Western and Middle Eastern scripts derive. They established trading colonies throughout the Mediterranean, including Carthage in modern Tunisia. The Phoenicians are not well attested archaeologically. Most of what we know about them comes from references in Greek, Roman, and Hebrew sources, often hostile, often filtered. The Phoenician homeland in modern Lebanon has been continuously inhabited for thousands of years. With modern cities built directly on top of the ancient ports, excavation has been limited. The civilization that invented the alphabet is, ironically, one of the worst documented major civilizations from its own perspective, the Etruscans, a civilization that dominated north-central Italy from approximately 800 to 100 BCE. The Etruscans were highly developed in art, metalwork, and urban planning. They strongly influenced early Rome. The Etruscan language has been only partially deciphered. It is not related to any well-known language family. The Etruscan corpus consists of approximately 10,000 inscriptions, mostly short and formulaic. Longer texts, religious manuals, histories, are mentioned by Roman writers but do not survive. The Etruscans were absorbed into Rome by the 1st century BCE. Their distinct identity was, by Roman policy and demographic shift, largely erased within 2 centuries of conquest. The Etruscan tomb paintings, particularly at Tarquinia, are among the most vivid surviving images of pre-Roman Italy. They depict banquets, dances, athletic contests in colors that have lasted 2,500 years. The Olmec, the first major civilization of Mesoamerica, flourishing in modern southern Mexico from approximately 1500 to 400 BCE. The Olmec produced colossal stone heads, carved portraits of rulers, weighing up to 40 tons, transported tens of kilometers from quarries to ceremonial centers. The Olmec almost certainly developed the first calendar and writing system in the Americas. They influenced all subsequent Mesoamerican civilizations. The Maya, the Zapotec, the Aztec. Only 17 Olmec colossal heads have been recovered. The Olmec script, if it can be called that, is undeciphered. The civilization collapsed for reasons that remain unclear. Their successors built on their foundations without preserving their language. At Tier 2, the civilizations are real and reasonably well attested. Below this tier, the discoveries become more recent and the context less stable. Tier 3, the recently discovered. Major civilizations that science has only described in the last century, in some cases the last few decades. The Indus Valley Civilization, a major civilization that flourished in modern Pakistan and northwestern India from approximately 3,300 to 1300 BCE. At its peak, the Indus Valley Civilization included over 1,000 cities and settlements, with the major sites of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro housing populations in the tens of thousands. The civilization was discovered in 1921 when British archaeologists excavating a Buddhist stupa at Harappa realized that the surrounding ruins were much older than they had expected. By 1923, the scale of the discovery was becoming clear. The Indus civilization had been forgotten for over 3,000 years. It was not mentioned in any surviving ancient text. Even the Vedic Indian texts that emerged from successor populations contain only fragmentary references that may relate to it. The Indus script, used on thousands of seals and tablets, has never been deciphered. The texts are too short and too few to allow systematic decoding. We do not know what language the Indus people spoke. We do not know what they called themselves. The Minoans, a civilization that flourished on Crete from approximately 3,500 to 1100 BCE. The Minoans were the first major civilization of Europe, predating the Greeks by over 1,000 years. Their capital at Knossos was, at its height, one of the largest cities in the Mediterranean. They produced sophisticated frescoes, intricate metalwork, and a writing system known as Linear A. Linear A has not been deciphered. Linear B, a successor script used to write Mycenaean Greek, was deciphered in 1952 by Michael Ventris. Linear A, despite extensive analysis, has resisted decoding. We do not know what language the Minoans spoke. The Minoan civilization collapsed in the 15th century BCE, possibly in connection with the eruption of the Thera volcano. Possibly through invasion, the Mycenaean Greeks moved into Knossos. The Minoan identity faded into Greek mythology. The Labyrinth, King Minos, the Minotaur, without leaving its own historical voice. The Vinca culture, a Neolithic civilization in the Balkans, flourishing from approximately 5,400 to 4,500 BCE. The Vinca produced large settlements, the largest in Europe at the time. With populations of several thousand, they developed sophisticated metalworking. They produced symbols, sometimes called the Vinca signs. that may constitute the earliest writing system in human history, predating Mesopotamian cuneiform by approximately 1,000 years. The Vinca signs have not been deciphered. They may not be writing in the modern sense. They may be proto-writing, a system of meaningful symbols that did not yet encode a spoken language. The distinction between proto-writing and writing is in some interpretations. Semantic, the Vinca civilization disappeared in the mid-5th millennium BCE. The reasons are not known. The site of Vinca Bilo Bordu near modern Belgrade has been excavated since the early 20th century and continues to yield material. The Nuragic civilization of Sardinia, a Bronze and Iron Age civilization that built thousands of distinctive stone towers called nuraghi across the Mediterranean island of Sardinia. The civilization flourished from approximately 1800 to 600 BCE. Over 7,000 nuraghi have been catalogued. They are some of the most numerous monumental structures in the Mediterranean from any era. The Nuragic people left no readable writing. Their language is unknown. Their political organization is partially inferred from the distribution and characteristics of the towers. The towers themselves are stone structures up to 20 meters tall, with internal chambers, defensive purposes, and astronomical alignments. They were built by a people who, by modern measures, had no formal state organization. The civilization was absorbed by Phoenician and later Roman influence beginning in the 8th century BCE. The towers remained standing. The people who built them dispersed into the surrounding Mediterranean populations. The Norte Chico civilization of Peru, a pre-Columbian civilization that flourished on the central coast of Peru from approximately 3,500 to 1800 BCE. The Norte Chico produced monumental architecture, including the pyramids of Caral, which are among the oldest pyramidal structures in the Americas. The civilization predates the Olmec by over 1,000 years. It may be the oldest known complex society in the Western Hemisphere. The Norte Chico was identified as a major civilization only in the 1992. Excavation work at Caral began in 1994. Radiocarbon dating of the pyramids produced results that pushed the chronology of complex society in the Americas back by over 1,000 years. The civilization left no writing. It built pyramids comparable in mass to early Egyptian structures at approximately the same time as the early Egyptian pyramids. The two civilizations did not know of each other. The parallel is not contact but convergence. At Tier 3, recent archaeological work has substantially expanded the catalog of known civilizations. Each new discovery, in many cases, pushes the chronology of complex society further into the past. Tier 4, the contested, cites, dates, and interpretations that mainstream archaeology has debated for decades. Göbekli Tepe, a megalithic site in southeastern Turkey, excavated since 1995 by German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt. The site features T-shaped stone pillars, arranged in circular enclosures, carved with figures of animals and abstract symbols. Carbon dating of the layers places the construction between approximately 9,600 and 8,000 BCE, thousands of years before the traditional development of agriculture and urban civilization. Göbekli Tepe substantially predates the earliest known cities. It was built by people who, by traditional accounts, were hunter-gatherers. The site implies that monumental religious or ceremonial architecture preceded the development of agriculture rather than following it. The implications for human prehistory are significant. Excavation at Göbekli Tepe continues. Only an estimated 5% of the site has been excavated. Adjacent sites in the region, Karahan Tepe and Avalikuri, show similar features at similar dates. The civilization that built these sites has no name in any surviving record. They are known only by their constructions. The Sphinx weathering question. The Great Sphinx at Giza is in standard chronology, dated to the reign of Khafre around 2500 BCE. In the 1992, geologist Robert Scotch examined the weathering patterns on the Sphinx and the surrounding enclosure. He concluded that the weathering was consistent with rainfall erosion, the kind of erosion that would have required substantial precipitation. The climate of the Sahara has been arid for most of the past 5,000 years. Scotch's analysis implied that the Sphinx might be much older than the traditional date. The proposal has been highly contested. Egyptologists have argued that the weathering can be explained by other mechanisms, groundwater action, sand erosion, post-construction weathering during the brief humid periods that have occurred since 2500 BCE. The debate has continued for decades. No new archaeological evidence has resolved the question. The geological evidence is suggestive. The archaeological context is firm. The two are not, in current scholarship, easily reconciled. The Antikythera mechanism. In 1901, sponge divers recovered a corroded bronze object from a Roman-era shipwreck off the Greek island of Antikythera. The object, encrusted with marine deposits, was set aside in the National Archaeological Museum of Athens. Decades later, X-ray and CT analysis revealed that the object was a complex geared mechanism, a hand-driven analog computer used to predict astronomical positions. The Antikythera mechanism dates to approximately 100 BCE. It uses dozens of interlocking gears, including a differential gear, to model the motions of the Sunday, Moon, and known planets. The mechanical complexity of the device was not equaled in European technology until the development of mechanical clocks in the 14th century, nearly 1500 years later. The mechanism is unique. No other comparable device has been recovered from antiquity. Either it was a one-of-a-kind creation of an exceptional craftsman, or it was one of many such devices, the rest of which have not survived. Both possibilities have implications for what we think we know about ancient Greek technology. The Sea Peoples. In approximately 1200 BCE, multiple Late Bronze Age civilizations across the eastern Mediterranean collapsed within a span of decades. The Hittite Empire fell. Mycenaean Greece collapsed. Egyptian records describe attacks by a coalition called the Sea Peoples, groups of unknown origin who raided coastal regions. The identity of the Sea Peoples is one of the major unresolved questions in Bronze Age archaeology. Egyptian records list specific group names: Peliset, Tijaker, Shiklesh, Denayan, Weshesh, Shurdan. Some of these names have been proposed to match later peoples, the Peliset becoming the Philistines, the Shurdan becoming the Sardinians. The proposals are contested. What caused the Late Bronze Age collapse is, similarly, unresolved. Proposed causes include climate change, the cutting of trade networks, internal social unrest, military, innovation among formerly marginal peoples, and combinations of all of the above. The collapse remained debated. The Younger Dryas hypothesis. The Younger Dryas was a sudden cooling event that began approximately 12,900 years ago and ended approximately 11,700 years ago, lasting roughly 1,200 years. The cooling was abrupt. Temperatures across the northern hemisphere may have dropped by 10 degrees Celsius within decades. The cause has been debated for over a century. One proposed cause is a major comet or asteroid impact. The evidence for this hypothesis includes high concentrations of certain trace elements in sediments deposited at the start of the Younger Dryas across multiple continents. The hypothesis has been promoted by researchers including Richard Firestone and others, and is contested by mainstream quaternary scientists. The relevance for ancient civilizations, the end of the last ice age, approximately 12,000 years ago, is the rough threshold beyond which traditional archaeology accepts no major civilizations. If a comet impact occurred at the start of the Younger Dryas, populations that had been developing more complex societies may have been wiped out. The hypothesis has been popularized by researchers operating outside mainstream archaeology. The data continues to be debated. At Tier 4, the contested questions are real. They are debated by researchers with standing in the field. The answers, in some cases, will reshape what we think we know. Tier 5, the hidden. Sites, structures, and finds that are known to exist, but are largely inaccessible to the public. The Vatican Secret Archives. The Vatican Apostolic Archive, renamed in 2019, holds the historical records of the Roman Catholic Church. The archive contains documents going back to the 8th century. The total extent is approximately 85 kilometers of shelving. The archive is, since 1881, open to qualified researchers. The secret in the historical name refers to the fact that the archive was originally private to the Pope. The Latin secretum means private, not hidden. Researchers must apply for access and are permitted to view specified documents. Substantial portions of the archive have been cataloged. However, the archive's relevance to ancient civilizations, the Vatican holds documents from monastic libraries that, in some cases, preserve fragments of ancient texts that survive nowhere else. The full extent of what is in the archive is not, even now, completely cataloged. New discoveries continue to surface from material that has been in Vatican custody for centuries. The Black Sea ancient shore sites. During the last ice age, sea levels were approximately 120 meters lower than today. Large areas of what are now continental shelves were dry land. Human populations lived in these now submerged regions as the ice melted and seas rose. Those populations either migrated or were submerged. In the Black Sea, the rising waters were particularly dramatic. Research published in the late 1990 seconds by William Ryan and Walter Pittman proposed that the Black Sea was, until approximately 5600 BCE, a freshwater lake significantly smaller than its current extent. The breaching of the Bosphorus produced a sudden marine flooding event. The flood inundated thousands of square kilometers of inhabited land within a span of decades. Underwater surveys of the Black Sea continental shelf have located ancient shorelines, freshwater mollusks, and possible human-modified objects. The Ryan-Pittman hypothesis remains contested. The submerged shorelines are real. The level of pre-flood human activity in the region has not been fully assessed. Most of the seafloor has not been surveyed. The Hoge-Vaart find. In the 1,990 seconds during the construction of a roadway in the Netherlands, workers found a Mesolithic site at Hoge-Vaart, dating to approximately 6000 BCE. The site contained traces of agricultural human habitation that predate the conventional date of European agriculture by several centuries. The find required reassessment of the archaeological chronology of the Low Countries. The Hoge-Vaart site is one of many such finds across Europe. Continental shelves submerged by post-glacial sea. Level rise hold an estimated thousands of pre-agricultural human sites that have not been excavated. The Doggerland region between modern Britain and the Netherlands was before approximately 6500 BCE. Dry land with substantial human habitation. Fishing trawlers have been pulling Mesolithic stone tools from the bottom of the North Sea for over a century. The full record of Doggerland inhabitants has not been compiled. Most of the European Mesolithic record sits underwater. Excavation of underwater Mesolithic sites is technically challenging and expensive. Most of the work remains to be done. The Mongolian royal tombs. The tomb of Genghis Khan, who died in 1227 CE, has never been found. The historical record indicates that the Mongols took deliberate steps to conceal the burial. The transport caravan reportedly killed everyone they encountered to prevent the location from being divulged. The horses that participated in the burial were killed. The slaves who dug the grave were killed. The soldiers who killed the slaves were killed. The historical accounts describe the location only as somewhere in northern Mongolia, possibly near the sacred mountain of Burkhan Khaldun. Modern Mongolian law restricts archaeological exploration in the region. The Genghis Khan tomb, if it exists in identifiable form, has not been located. It is one of the most significant archaeological mysteries in the world. Adjacent royal tombs of the Mongol period, those of subsequent Khans, have also not been definitively identified. The Yuan dynasty Chinese sources are unclear on the burial locations. The Mongolian heartland holds these tombs somewhere. They have not yet been found. The library of Ashurbanipal's missing tablets. In the 7th century BCE, the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal assembled the first systematic library of the ancient world at his capital. Nineveh, the library contained tens of thousands of cuneiform tablets covering literature, science, religion, and administration. The library was buried when Nineveh was destroyed in 612 BCE. It was rediscovered by British excavators in the 1850 seconds. The recovered tablets are now in the British Museum and other collections. Approximately 30,000 have been catalogued. A substantial fraction of the original library was not recovered, destroyed in the burning of Nineveh, lost to local theft over the millennia, or remaining unexcavated in unsearched portions of the site. The original Epic of Gilgamesh, the world's oldest extended literary narrative, comes to us through tablets recovered from the Ashurbanipal library. The version we have is not necessarily complete. Some sections survive only in damaged form. Other works mentioned in Ashurbanipal's catalogs do not survive in any form. The recovered library is a fraction. The lost portions are not coming back. At Tier 5, the catalog is real, but most of it is inaccessible. At Tier 6, the categories themselves come into question. Tier 6, the disputed frontiers. Sites and theories that exist at the edges of accepted archaeology, not pseudoscience, but not yet consensus. The Bosnian pyramids. In 2005, Bosnian businessman Semir Osmanagic announced that several hills near Visoko, Bosnia, were artificial pyramids of great antiquity. He named them after celestial bodies, the Pyramid of the Sunday, the Pyramid of the Moon, and others. The European Association of Archaeologists and the geological community examined the sites in subsequent years. The consensus is that the hills are natural geological formations, specifically flatirons, which are tilted sedimentary structures common in tectonically active regions. The pyramidal appearance is the result of natural processes. Osmanagic's project has continued. He has organized tourism. He claims further excavation has confirmed the artificial origin. Mainstream archaeology does not accept the claims. The site is a case study in how non-academic actors can establish their own archaeological narratives that draw popular attention without scientific acceptance. Yonaguni. In 1986, a diver named Kihachiro Aratake discovered an unusual underwater rock formation off the coast of Yonaguni Island in the Ryukyu Islands of Japan. The formation features stepped surfaces, right angles, and platforms reaching to depths of approximately 25 meters. Some researchers including marine geologist Masaki Kimura, have argued that the formation is artificial, the ruins of an ancient submerged city. Other researchers, including geologist Robert Scotch, have argued that the formation is the product of natural sedimentary processes. The layered Yonaguni sandstone naturally weathers into stepped patterns along its bedding planes. The right angles can be explained by joint patterns in the rock. The question is unresolved. The formation is real. Whether it is artificial, partially modified, or entirely natural remains contested. If artificial, the structure would predate any known sea level submergence of the Ryukyu region by thousands of years. The Egyptian first time question. Egyptian religious texts refer to a time before historical Egypt, Zep Tepi, the first time, when gods or pre-human ancestors ruled. Mainstream Egyptology treats Zep Tepi as a mythological frame. Mainstream researchers have proposed that the references reflect memories of a much earlier civilization, possibly destroyed in the floods of the late Pleistocene. The proposal is not widely accepted. The Egyptian religious text can be analyzed straightforwardly as creation mythology. The proposed prehistorical civilization that they would reference has no independent archaeological confirmation. However, the broader question, whether any cultural memories of pre-civilizational events were transmitted into the historical period, is not fully resolved. Mainstream archaeology generally treats early creation myths as cosmological narratives. Some recent scholarship has explored whether specific myth elements may encode geographic or geological information dating from substantially earlier periods. The work is incomplete. The Anunnaki interpretations. In Sumerian mythology, the Anunnaki were a group of deities, the children of the chief god, and the Sumerian texts describing them are well attested in the cuneiform record. They constitute, in their original context, a standard polytheistic pantheon. Beginning in the 1970 seconds, the writer Zecharia Sitchin proposed alternative interpretations of the Sumerian texts. Sitchin argued that the Anunnaki were extraterrestrial visitors from a planet called Nibiru. Sitchin's interpretations have been thoroughly rejected by Assyriologists. The actual cuneiform texts do not support his readings. Sitchin's translations were not accepted by the Assyriological community. However, the Sitchin framing has been widely popularized. The Anunnaki interpretations form a recurrent element in alternative archaeology literature. They are at the boundary between extreme reinterpretation and outright pseudoscience. The original Sumerian texts are accessible. The proposed extraterrestrial reading is not supported by them. The Hancock-Carlson debates. Graham Hancock has, since the 1990 seconds, popularized the idea of a lost advanced ancient civilization that preceded the rise of agriculture and was destroyed by the Younger Dryas event. His proposals draw on widely separated archaeological sites, Göbekli Tepe, the Sphinx, underwater formations. Andean Masonry. He has presented these ideas in books, television series, and the major podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience. Mainstream archaeologists, including Flint Dibble and others, have publicly debated Hancock. The mainstream position is that the evidence Hancock cites is being interpreted in ways that the underlying archaeology does not support. Hancock's position is that mainstream archaeology has institutional resistance to the conclusions he proposes. The debate is genuine. Hancock is not, by any meaningful standard, an unserious researcher. His specific claims are not generally accepted by professional archaeology. The disagreement is ongoing. The broader public discussion has shifted in the past decade in directions that put pressure on mainstream archaeology to engage more directly with alternative proposals. At Tier 6, the disputed frontiers represent the active edge of public archaeological interest. Below this tier, the questions become more speculative. Tier 7, the bottom of the iceberg. At the bottom of the ancient civilizations, icebergs sit propositions and traditions that exist beyond the reach of conventional archaeology. Some are folklore, some are unverifiable, some in the long view of the field may turn out to have something to them. The Atlantis question. Plato described Atlantis in two of his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, in approximately 360 BCE. He described a powerful island civilization west of the Pillars of Heracles that in his account sank into the sea approximately 9,000 years before his time. Plato's account is the only ancient source that describes Atlantis. There is no earlier Greek tradition, there is no parallel Egyptian text. The account exists in Plato's writings and nowhere else. Modern archaeology and geology have looked for Atlantis. They have not found a civilization matching Plato's description. Plato may have been writing allegory. Plato may have been drawing on real but distorted memories of some other event. The Thera eruption that destroyed Minoan civilization is sometimes proposed, but the chronology does not match. The Atlantis tradition has persisted in Western culture for over 2,000 years. It has shaped speculation about lost civilizations. The original referent, if any, has not been identified. The tradition is older than most of the civilizations we have firmly identified. It may be older than the surviving archaeological record for any of them, the Mu and Lemuria traditions. In the 19th century, several Western writers proposed the existence of other lost continents, Mu in the Pacific, Lemuria in the Indian Ocean. These proposals predated plate tectonics. They were partly motivated by attempts to explain similarities between widely separated biological species. Once continental drift was understood, the geological basis for these lost continents disappeared. The traditions, however, have persisted in popular culture and in certain spiritual movements. They are repeated in theosophical literature, in some interpretations of Pacific Islander oral traditions, and in 20th century occult writing. They have no basis in modern geology. They are folkloric artifacts of 19th century science before plate tectonics. The actual Pacific and Indian Oceans contain submerged archaeological features at various depths: submerged Mesolithic sites, submerged coastal settlements, submerged trade route stations. The actual prehistory of the maritime regions is richer than mainstream surveys have captured. It is not, however, the prehistory described in the Mu and Lemuria traditions, the hollow Earth proposals. In the 17th century, the astronomer Edmund Halley, the Halley of the comet, proposed that the Earth's interior might consist of multiple concentric shells. The proposal was a serious attempt to explain anomalies in Earth's magnetic field. In the 19th century, several writers proposed that the Earth was hollow with inhabitants living on the inner surface. The proposals were generally dismissed by mainstream science. The hollow Earth proposal is by modern geophysical understanding. False earthquake seismic data has thoroughly characterized the interior of the Earth. It consists of a solid inner core, a liquid outer core, a viscous mantle, and a thin crust. There is no significant hollow region. The hollow Earth tradition has persisted in popular fiction, in some fringe communities, and in occasional unscientific claims of expeditions to find polar entrances. It is folklore. It is not consistent with modern Earth science. The pre-Younger, Dryas civilization hypothesis revisited. At the bottom of the ancient civilizations iceberg, the question is whether one or more advanced civilizations, by some definition of advanced, existed during the late Pleistocene and were destroyed in the events surrounding the end of the last ice age. Mainstream archaeology does not accept this hypothesis. The accumulated evidence is, in mainstream views, insufficient. Non-mainstream researchers have argued that the evidence has been actively dismissed by an archaeological establishment committed to the existing chronology. The debate continues. What can be said with certainty? The post-glacial period was profoundly disruptive. Sea levels rose by over 100 meters. Climate shifted, human populations migrated and were displaced. Whatever cultural elaboration may have existed in the late Pleistocene, whether modest or substantial, the archaeological record from that period is, for most of the inhabited landmasses, now underwater, simply not available. The absence of evidence in this case is genuinely an absence. The absence is not by itself proof of either presence or absence of advanced cultures. The question is open in a way that science finds uncomfortable. The deep prehistory question. Anatomically modern humans have existed for approximately 300,000 years. The most extensive period of human existence, the deep prehistory, was a time of small-scale mobile hunter-gatherer societies. The recent revisions to our understanding of prehistory have, however, complicated this picture. Göbekli Tepe and related sites show that monumental construction predates the conventional development of agriculture and urban civilization. The cultural elaborations of late Pleistocene humans were, by available archaeological evidence, more sophisticated than mid-20th century scholarship credited. At the bottom of the iceberg, the deep prehistory of the human species is a vast period of which we have only fragmentary glimpses. Tools, bones, occasional preserved organic materials. The cognitive and social capacities of humans during this period were essentially identical to ours. What they did with those capacities, beyond what we have recovered, is in detail unknown. At the surface, you have the well-known civilizations that appear in every textbook: Egypt, Mesopotamia, Greece, Rome. Beneath the surface, the less familiar civilizations that played major roles in their regions, but received less attention: the Hittites, the Phoenicians, the Etruscans, the Olmec. Beneath that, the recently discovered civilizations, whose identification has expanded the chronological scope of complex human society. Beneath that, the contested sites and dates that mainstream archaeology has debated for decades. Beneath that, the hidden archives, the submerged shorelines, the unrecovered tombs. Beneath that, the disputed frontiers where alternative archaeology proposals encounter mainstream resistance. And at the bottom, the propositions and traditions about deep prehistory that current archaeology cannot definitively confirm or refute. Modern humans, in our current anatomical form, have existed for approximately 300,000 years. We have written records for the last 5,000. The other 295,000 years happened. Most of what occurred during them is not in our textbooks, it is in the soil, in the sediment beneath the rising sea. The iceberg of the past is not a static catalog. Each year, new finds emerge. Each year, the catalog grows. The work is not finished.